Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is a wet and a cold day at Speaker's Corner today, so there's not going to be many people listening in, and I'm going to try and save my voice for later because I'll probably need it. So, All Saints Day is just around the corner. Hallowmass is just around the corner, and so I want to start off by saying Happy Hallowmass, because by the time that you watch this video, Hallowmass will be happening or will have happened. And I want to say, as Christians, peace be with you, brother. I want to say, as Christians, we can celebrate Hallowmass. Hallowmass is a Christian festival. All that voodoo nonsense that you see on Halloween is just Americanism. It's just American culture commercializing another Christian festival, like they commercialized Christmas. Hallowmass is a time when Christians remember the fact that we're all saints in Christ, that Christ has made us holy, that out of our holiness we increase, out of the holiness that Christ has given us, we increase in that holiness by allowing God's energy and God's life to flow through us, and we become holy. And I want to talk a little bit about how, as Christians, we can become holy. Holiness is this idea of setting our lives apart for God, because God is holy. Holy, 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 say the angels. He is holy because he is something different from the world around him, from the created order. And as Christians, we are called by Jesus Christ to be holy as our Father in heaven is holy. That is what Jesus Christ said. Which means that we are to be distinct and different from the world around us. And so when Christ says, be holy as your Father in heaven is holy, he's calling us to sainthood. If you've ever wondered what your vocation is as a Christian, the answer to that question is to be wholly faithful unto God. So what does that look like in real terms? It looks like the Christianization of your life, the Christianization of your labor and work, the Christianization of your rest and play, the Christianization of your morals, of your aesthetics, of your ethics, of your politics, of your economics, the Christianization of your cultural norms, of your festivals, of time itself, and how you spend your time. This is what it means to Christianize your life as a Christian. And one of the key ways that we Christianize our lives is through the practice of disciplines. Why? Because disciplines embody a certain Christian value or belief. And so through practicing those disciplines, we peg them into our lives. We drive those values or those beliefs deep into our lives by building our life around them. And so to build our lives around them, we must do something regularly. So I'm going to list now some disciplines that Christians should practice on a regular basis. But what regular looks like for you is going to be different from what regular looks like for someone else. Regular prayer, regular fasting, regular almsgiving, regular study of the faith, regular self-examination, regular evangelism, regular interaction with and integration into the wider Christian community, the regular practice of hospitality, the keeping of your word. These are all examples of disciplines that Christians should build their lives around. Muslims have the 5 pillars. We've got disciplines like these. And by practicing these disciplines, we build holiness into our life through habituation. 2 key things that you can do to help you grow in your faith, to help you grow in your discipleship, is 1, to study the faith. Study regularly what it is to be a Christian. The complement to studying about the faith is self-examination, to see how, if, where and when and in what degree and in what ways you are living out the values and the beliefs that you've just studied. So by studying your faith and by self-examination, you can then identify where as a Christian you can still grow. And it's about the practice of repentance, the idea and the willingness to jettison beliefs, values, attitudes, perceptions, prejudices, ambitions, goals, aspirations that don't embody a Christian worldview, to make space in your life for more Christian values, Christian aspirations, Christian prejudices, Christian values, Christian virtues. The Christian life is about embodying two things: truth and virtue. It is about how you live. It's not an academic exercise. It's not required of a Christian that you can formulate a perfect description of the Trinity, or you can formulate a perfect description of the Incarnation. All you need to do is give intellectual assent to those that have. That's all. But the everyday Christian life is the life that's lived amongst the pots and pans, the paper shuffling, the looking at the computer screen, the paying of the bills, your relationships with your families, your relationships with your friends, who you vote for in the ballot box, and what kind of politics you stand for. That is how a Christian lives out their life. That's what discipleship means. There's no program that's ever been embodied in a church that disciples anyone. Disciples make disciples, not programs. The Christian life is about a new identity in Jesus, in which we strip ourselves of the attitudes, the perceptions, the values, the vices of the world, and we put on the attitudes, the perceptions, and the virtues of Christ. The Christian life is about Christianization of our own lives, the Christianization of our fellowships, the Christianization of our communities, and the Christianization of our society and civilization. The ultimate expression of this is when Christians establish a new Christendom in Europe, a Christendom for the first time in Africa or Latin America or North America. That means that we don't embody the values and the aspirations of the liberals and the liberal elites, but we embody the teachings of the apostles and the prophets. Right now in Hallowmass, we're celebrating the fact that we are all made saints in Christ. But the apostles are clear that we should lift up holy examples to follow, and we should remember them. Paul does it himself in Hebrews, I think it's 11 or 10, where he lists the champions of faith that came before us, who quenched fires and were eaten by lions and were sawn in two and conquered kingdoms. That is what the communion of saints is about. Conquering the kingdoms and the dominions of the devil. Whether those demonic kingdoms are Sharia law, or communism, or fascism, or Nazism, or liberalism. And when a Christian gives themselves to this cause in a way that they are shedding their blood or suffering as a martyr or as a confessor of the church, as Christians, we elevate such people as our champions. And so, ladies and gentlemen, in honor of the fact that this Wednesday we're going to be entering into Hallowmass, I want to talk about some Christian martyrs and confessors. And the first one that I want to talk about is a Somali martyr from the Somali church. And his saint's day is on June the 29th. And I want to tell you about his story. His name was Abdiweli. That was his name. A Somali Muslim. His full name was Abdiweli Ahmed, who was descended from a long line of devout Muslims from Somalia, where he said to be Somali means to be Muslim, where it's said to be Somali means to be Muslim. He was taught that Islam was in his blood. But in 1993, while still a student at university, he began questioning Islam and comparing the Quran to the Bible. The more Abdiweli read the Bible, the more he fell in love with Christ. After many discussions with Christian friends, he eventually put his trust in Jesus Christ. When other students from the university faculty learned that he had left Islam and become a Christian and had started attending a Bible college, they considered Abdiweli dangerous. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the kind of culture that says because you're studying the Bible, you're dangerous. What an intolerant, ignorant, backward, savage culture such a place is. Abdiweli's decision to follow Christ came at great personal cost. He was ostracized by his family and rejected by them and disowned. He was disinherited. He was threatened with violence, and they threatened to kill him for simply saying that he was a disciple of Christ. And yet, despite these tribulations and these difficulties, Abdiweli refused to surrender his new faith. He refused to deny Christ. Think about this courage the next time you hear about a bishop of the Church of Sweden or the Church of England saying that we need to cover up crosses to not offend people, or that we should diminish our Christianity in some way to make space for other people to be feeling welcome. He continued to share his faith. Quote from I was persecuted, I was chased away, and then I was beaten up. That's what Abdiweli suffered because he became a Christian at the hands of Muslims in Somalia. At one point, he escaped a mob of 40 people who came to his mother's house seeking to kill him. For what crime? Because he had declared love for his enemies. Because he had declared love for Somali Muslims. Because he had said that he worshipped the one true God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. These were his crimes, to study the Bible. And a mob of 40 Muslims came to kill him. On the afternoon of February the 7th, 2013, 3 assassins shot Abdiweli to death as he talked with a Christian pastor in a center in Garissa, Kenya. Tom Nettle, a voice of the Martyrs, said this: Ahmed's death was a tragedy, but it also served to inspire others. I share this story with you, my brothers and sisters, so that you can learn to be courageous. The true strength of a martyr, the true strength of a Christian, is the blood of our martyrs. The blood of those who give their lives for Christ is the blood from which we draw our strength to defy those that would persecute God's holy church. The liberals and their liberal state, we defy them because of the blood of the martyrs. The communists that tried to destroy the church, we defy them because of the blood of the martyrs. The fascists and the Nazis that attack our black brothers and sisters in their fellowships in America, we defy them because of the blood of the martyrs. The caliphates and those who seek to push Sharia law, we defy them because of the blood of the martyrs. If Christians are willing to give their lives for Jesus Christ, what excuse do you have, my brothers and sisters, for cowardice, for fearing confrontation? What excuse do you have for bowing at the false god of multiculturalism, or silence for the sake of the peace of Europa? When our brothers and sisters are dying in Nigeria and Pakistan and Egypt and Iraq and Burma, how can you be silent so that we can have peace in our societies, so that the middle class hypocrites and the wimpy soy boy church of the hipster Christian doesn't have to deal with conflict? When our brothers and sisters are dying, their blood cries out for justice. Their blood cries out for more than your prayers. It cries out for us to create organizations and networks of solidarity to defend the church from all of its persecutors, all of the time, everywhere in the world. Your individualism is killing you, O Christian. I want to tell you the story of another great Christian saint, Louis IX. Louis IX was a king of France in the 13th century, born in 1214 in Poissy, France, and he died August 25th, 1270, near Tunis, now Tunisia. His feast day is August the 11th. Louis was the fourth child of the king of Louis the 8th of France, and his queen Blanche of Castile. But since the first three died at an early age, Louis was said to have 7 brothers and sisters and became heir to the throne. He was raised with particular care by his parents, especially his mother. An experienced horseman who taught him riding and the fine points of hunting. Tutors taught him biblical history, geography, and ancient literature. His mother instructed him in religion herself and educated him as a sincere, unbigoted Christian. And from this we see, ladies and gentlemen, that the best Sunday school that any Christian child can have is a good Christian mother. And that is exactly why, as Christians, we should esteem motherhood as a virtuous calling. Not like the liberals do when they villainize it as some kind of failing of a woman, but as something that is to be honored and celebrated. Now, when his father succeeded Philip II on August 1223, the long struggle between the Carpathian dynasty and the Plantagenets of England was still not settled, but there was a temporary lull, since the English king, Henry III, was in no position to resume the war. In the south of France, the Albigensian heretics, who were in open revolt against both church and state, had still not been brought under control. Finally, there was ferment and the threat of revolt amongst the great nobles, who had been kept in line by the firm hand of Philip Augustus. The Queen Mother's first concern was to take Louis to Reims upon his father's death to be crowned king. Many of the most powerful nobles refrained from participating in the ceremony, but Blanche was not a woman to be discouraged by adversity. While continuing her son's education, she vigorously attacked the rebellious barons, particularly Hugh of Lusignan and Peter of Dreux. Louis won after he was an adult. He won a great victory over the English and fell seriously ill with a form of malaria at Pontoise-les-Nyon. It was then in December 1244 that he decided to take up the cross as a crusader and go on crusade to free the Holy Land. Despite the lack of enthusiasm amongst his barons and his entourage, the situation in the Holy Land was critical. Jerusalem had fallen into Muslim hands on August 23rd, 1244, and the armies of the Sultan Egypt had seized Damascus. If aid from the west was not forthcoming, the Christian kingdom of the East would soon collapse. In Europe, the times had never been more propitious for a crusade. There was a respite in the great struggle between the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy. Moreover, Louis IX's forceful attitude towards the Holy Roman Empire, Emperor Frederick II, had dampened the latter's enthusiasm for war with other Christians. The Kingdom of France was at peace, and the barons agreed to accompany their sovereign on the Seventh Crusade. The preparations were long and complex. After entrusting the regency to his mother, Louis IX finally embarked from Aiguière-Mortaise on the 25th of August, 1248. The reason why I want to uphold Louis IX as an example of a great saint is because he sacrificed everything for the cause of Christ, even the cause of his nation. He saw the cause of the church and the cause of Christ to be more important than the cause of his earthly kingdom. And that is a lesson for us all as Christians, that all of our worldly concerns are secondary to the cause of Christ and Christ's holy church. He took his wife and his children with him, since he preferred not to leave them with his mother, the daughter-in-law, alone together. His fleet comprised 100 ships, carrying 35,000 soldiers of Christ. Louis' objective was simple. He intended to land in Egypt, seize the principal towns of the country, and use them as hostages in exchange for Syrian cities. Is that brother okay? What happened? Someone pushed him or kicked him or what?
That's horrible. Yeah. I'm not after a number. I just want to understand. I know you don't like. I'll hate it. What I'm asking is the pain moving upwards? Who? I don't know. That's the one. I don't understand about you. I don't believe you. He's helping me. I'm asking. I'm trying to understand. Who did this? Hello, Hello. Hello. What are your injuries? I don't know what to my leg.
What happened?
Some Muslim man pushed him and his knee has dislocated completely.
I would like an ambulance now.
So no one see him?
How old are you?
I'm 50.
Have you got any other medical conditions?
Probably. I don't know. My name's Simon Thomas Law.
Sorry, Houghton.
Do you have any medical conditions or medication?
I don't care.
Hold on to her back. Don't let go of it.
Why am I lying on the
How are we
floor?
going to find out without you telling me?
My name is Simon Thomas Law.
It's a medical condition.
My birth.
That guy's cap was flipped off, and the guy with the blue cap,
Right.
the Israel cap.
What's going on? Is he alright?
No, it might have dislocated his knee.
Tell me about me. I'm coming out over 40 years. I've been coming to younger than
You need an umbrella, bro.
Every week, just every
about Matt the Hunty.
never does.
I'm talking. I'll talk to you afterwards.
That got you that name.
Not really. So what's just happened is a Muslim has pushed an elderly man and it looks like he's dislocated his knee. Just another example of the kind of violence Christians are facing and everyone is facing in this park on a weekly basis. Every single week we have examples of Muslims attacking other people in this park. And the police won't make an arrest, no one will be prosecuted, and the guy has probably gotten away with it. Every single day, ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing in this park, no, put it here, bro, put it there. Every single week in this park, ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing how everyone is going to be treated if we ever allow Muslims to dominate in our land. We need to take a hard line with these Islamists and start deporting them. We don't need them. They need us. Britain will not suffer anything by deporting its Islamists. Our country will be made a better place by doing so, and it's time that we take a strong line against this kind of thuggery. Not allowing them to intimidate us, but organising ourselves to defend ourselves against this kind of harassment. Now, when I talked about what happened to an elderly man, we had a gaggle of little Muslim girls over there laughing and joking about it. Because apparently, dislocating the knee of an elderly man is great Islam. It's a victory for the lions of Islam. Our country will be better when these people are deported and when they are forced out of our lands. We are made a better land and a stronger land by standing up to Islamists. We will become a better people when we stand up to these thugs and we don't allow them to intimidate us, and when we don't allow them to bully us, and when we don't allow them to harass us. And we must create and demand a state that will deal with them for who they are. The fact that their hearts are full of hatred should not escape our notice, and we should deal with them on the basis of their hatred. Now, I want to go back and continue talking about the saint, Saint Louis IX, and the Seventh Crusade. As you can see, it's getting a bit rainy, so my phone is struggling. So, The crusade began promisingly. After wintering in Cyprus, the expedition landed near Damietta, Egypt, in June 1249. The king was one of the first to leap from his ship and head onto the land, where he planted the Oriflamme of Saint Denis on the occupied Islamic Egypt. The town and port of Damietta were strongly fortified, but on June 6th, Louis IX was able to enter the city. He then pushed on towards Cairo, but the rain-swollen waters of the Nile and its canals stopped him for several months. It was necessary to capture the citadel of Al-Manusra. After several attempts, a platoon bridged was finally built, and the battle took place on February the 8th, 1250. The outcome of the struggle was for a long time undecided, and the king's brother, Robert of Artois, was killed. Louis finally gained control of the situation through his energy and self-possession. But his army was exhausted. The Nile carried thousands of corpses away from Al-Mansura, and plague struck the survivors. The king had to issue orders for the agonizing retreat towards Damietta. Louis IX, stricken, in turn, dragged himself along in the rear guard of his disintegrating army. The Egyptians harassed the fleeing army and finally captured it on April 7th, 1250. After long negotiations, the king and his principal barons were freed for a high ransom, and Louis rejoined his wife at Acre. The Crusaders would have preferred to return to France, but the king decided instead to remain. In 4 years, he was to transform a military defeat into a diplomatic success, conclude advantageous alliances, and fortify the Christian cities of Syria. He returned to his kingdom only upon learning of his mother's death. The saintly Louis enjoyed immense prestige throughout Western Christendom. He took advantage of this to open negotiations for a lasting peace with the English king, Henry III, who had become his brother-in-law. The discussions extended over several years, but the treaty was finally signed in Paris on May 28, 1258. In Louis's eyes, the most important point for him in the 13th century was the power of the sovereign, was measured less by the extent of his possessions than by the number and importance of his vassals. A just and equitable ruler, Louis was also wanted to create goodwill between his children and those of the Plantagenets, his political rivals. The king's reputation for impartiality was so great that he was often called upon to arbitrate disputes outside of France, and he once did in a violent dispute between Henry III and his barons. Louis IX embodies for the Christian the principles of chivalry, the idea of the chivalric knight, a man willing to sacrifice his crown and all of his worldly possessions to the defense of the church, a man who led from the front, was not frightened of throwing himself into the danger and the fray of battle, a man who, even when stricken with illness, worked in the rear guard of his army to protect his soldiers. despite being a king and the most important person in the army, who is willing to offer his life again and again and again in defense of his brothers and sisters, and who used all of his might, his influence, his power, his energy, his academic ability, all of his skill to strengthen the position of the church when it was in danger. From these two saints, I want to say to you, my brothers and sisters, we have an exemplary lesson of how we as Christians must conduct ourselves. As Christians, we must not be frightened to do battle with jihadis. As Christians, we must not be frightened to do battle with mujahideen. As Christians, we must not be frightened to defend our mother church. As Christians, we must give of ourselves and our resources to strengthening the church in all of her causes, ladies and gentlemen. As Christians, we must seek to build up the church wherever it is. And so I say to you, Somali Christians, be inspired by the example of Abdiweli and create a Somali church in the Somali diaspora that sounds Somali, looks Somali, that celebrates Somali martyrs, that celebrates Somali saints, that worships in Somali, and when you can, that goes on pilgrimage to the sites of the Somali martyrs. I say to you, Christians, take on board this principle of crusade and use it. Use it within the fullness that the law allows you to. Don't go beyond the boundaries of the law, but work within the law and work to change the law in every way to make the church stronger. Apathy and cowardice are not in the heart of a true disciple of Christ. I say to you, Kurdish Christians, build a church that sounds Kurdish, that looks Kurdish, that celebrates Kurdish martyrs, and that goes on pilgrimage to the sites where Kurdish martyrs have died. You Kurds have been betrayed by the Ummah. They stab you in the back every day. How many Kurdish children have died? How many Kurdish women have been murdered and raped? And have you seen the so-called Ummah march in your defense? No. But here I am, a Christian speaking on your behalf. Abandon this Arab imposition and give your lives and your cause to Christ and create a Christian civilization right in the heart of the Middle East, so that they can be a free Kurdistan that lives in peace and defends Assyrian Christians and does not persecute them. You Ugyar Muslims of China, I say this to you, the Ummah has betrayed you. How many millions of you are locked up in concentration camps? And have you seen the Ummahs marching in your defense? No. I'll tell you why, Ugyars, you've been betrayed by the Ummah. I'll tell you why, Kurds, you have been betrayed by the Ummah. Because you don't speak Arabic. Because you're not considered Arabs. And in Islam, no matter what the Dawagandis tell you, the lives of the Arabs are more important than the lives of anyone else. Muhammad himself traded one Arab slave for 2 black slaves. That was Muhammad's economy. Muslims march for Palestine not because they care about Palestine, but because they hate the fact that the Jews are doing the killing. When Muslims are killing Muslims, The Muslims have nothing to say about it. They don't march, they don't protest, they're entirely silent. Ladies and gentlemen, as Christians, we must follow the examples of the saints, and that example is an example to nobility. It is an example to virtue. It is an example to stand upon truth. It is an example to fight against evil wherever evil raises its head. The wishy-washy liberal Christianity that the BBC presents to you is not real Christianity. That is civic religion, a religion that serves the British establishment, one that is not faithful to Christ, to the teachings of the apostles, to the unity and solidarity of the Church Catholic, nor to the cause of Christ. And that is what I am calling you today. I am calling you to be saints and martyrs and confessors unto the Lord. Offer him your riches in sacrifice. Offer him your life in sacrifice. Offer him the fullness of your strength in sacrifice. Work to the establishment of the kingdom of God, to the strengthening of the church against all of the enemies of Christ. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
It's on the topic.
Yes, of course. Can I get some water?
Your friends here, the sheep.
That's fine. Any questions? Peace be with you. Any questions before?
Before JC says something. Any question on the topic or?
Any questions before I go on?
Don't be shy, speaker's corner.
Okay, since there are no questions, let me tell you another story. Because we're celebrating Hallowmass by remembering the saints and the martyrs. So let me tell you the story of Leah Sharibu. She was a Nigerian schoolgirl who right now is being held as a hostage by an Islamist army known as Boko Haram. And she has not been released because she refused to convert to Islam. The refrain of the hymn, Faith of Our Fathers, is a traditional Catholic hymn written in 1849 by Frederick William Faber in memory of the Catholic martyrs from the time of the establishment of the Church of England. And it says these words: Faith of our fathers, holy faith, we will be true to thee till death. Leah Sharibu is a young Christian girl who right now, as you hear my voice, is being true to these words. She's a young Christian girl from an obscure, unknown Nigerian Christian village called Dapchi in the predominantly Muslim northeastern Nigeria. Aged 15, Leah Sharibu was abducted along 100 other Christian schoolgirls by the Islamist army Boko Haram, a terrorist group, from their boarding school in Dapchi village, the Yobe state in northeastern Nigeria, in February 2018. However, in the early hours of the 21st of March 2018, to the surprise of the villagers, and indeed the world, Boko Haram drove into the town in 9 trucks, unloaded all of the girls except the 5 that had died during the kidnapping, and one exception, Leah Sharibu. She was not released, unlike the other girls, because she refused to renounce her Christian faith. ask you this question. How many liberal celebrities have mentioned the name of Leah Sharibu?
0.
Has Gary Lineker spoke up for Leah Sharibu?
Baby, go, baby.
No, he hasn't. Name me another celebrity that thinks to talk on politics. Ladies and gentlemen, all of those virtue signaling hypocrites who jump on Twitter to talk about Palestine and Israel, why have they not remembered the life of Leah Sharibu?
Why?
Why? I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because she's black, she's poor, and she's Christian. And the white middle class of England and those virtue signaling left-wing hypocrites don't give a shit about black, poor Christians. So the cause of Leah Sharibu has been forgotten, but not by me. Why?
Why?
Because my theology tells me to love the church wherever the church is in the world. And a confessor as holy and as venerable as Leah Sharibu should be a name that we all remember across the entire world, across the whole of the church. Her cause and her suffering should never be far from our hearts. We should call for the destruction of this Islamist army called Boko Haram. We should work for the destruction of this Islamist army called Boko Haram. We should call upon our governments to bomb Boko Haram like they bombed ISIS. And why? Because the life of black Nigerian Christians is just as important as Yazidis in Iraq and Syria. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, Christianity does not call us to pacifism in the face of Boko Haram and other Islamist armies. We are simply called to work within the law. But there is much that we can do within the law to bring about the end of these Islamist armies and to bring about the freedom of people like Sharibu. I want to ask you this question. How can you consider bishops and priests who compromise on our faith to accommodate ideologies of multiculturalism, how can you consider them worthy of respect when they are compared to the example of the confessor Leah Sharibu? Who is a greater champion of the faith? The bishops of the Church of England who want to celebrate Muhammad's birthday, or Leah Sharibu, despite the fact she has been kidnapped, held a prisoner, forced into marriage, raped repeatedly, and has refused to renounce her faith? Who is a better example to us?
Of course.
Who is a better example to us? That failing Pope in Rome called Francis, who tells you not to seek the conversion of the Muslims, or Leah Sharibu, who has refused to give up her faith? Have any black Muslims come to this park to speak up for Leah Sharibu? No. Let me ask you this, you Nigerian Christians of diaspora. Why are you so silent about the plight of Leah Sharibu? Why are you not leading the Western European Church in standing up for the church in Nigeria? Why, ladies and gentlemen, are you black identitarians like Gang? Yes, once I've finished, I'll take a question. After I've finished. Why are you black identitarians who talk about justice, not speaking up for Leah Sharibu.
Where's respect?
Why aren't you speaking up for her respect? Why am I, the white Christian from Europe, speaking up for the poor black Christian in Nigeria? I'll tell you why. Because I love them. Because Leah Sharibu is my sister and I care about what happens to her. And if you are a person that has any sense of justice in your heart, you would care about what happens to her. But ladies and gentlemen, notice the Muslims are heckling me because I'm speaking up for someone who's suffering. Wake up to what that symbolizes. Wake up to what that represents. There is no matter, there's no bottom to the evil that they will go to. No matter, no bottom of the injustice that they will seek to justify. There is no bottom to the evil that they will try to obscure in this park. We see it week in, week out, and you're witnessing it right now in front of your own eyes. Wake up to what it represents. These are your enemies. These are the ones that oppose the church. These are the ones that want Leah Sharibu to remain a captive, a slave, being regularly raped, a child raped and held as a victim. And this is how they behave. Wake up to what they represent. Stand with Leah Sharibu. Find your voice for Leah Sharibu. Remember her in your prayers. Call out the weak Archbishop of Canterbury for his betrayal of the Christians of Nigeria. And in November, when the Church of England hosts its synod at Church House in London, on the days and the times of the synod, come and join the national protest calling out the weakness and the hypocrisy of the Church of England in how they have betrayed Leah Sharibu. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
When we getting rid of the Church of England? Yes.
Any questions?
No, he got in first.
When we getting rid of the Church?
Can you answer that very question? Do you want to ask a question? Okay, God bless. When are we getting rid of the Church of England?
That's a question.
Let's make a distinction, brothers and sisters. The Church in England and the Church of England are not the same thing.
What's the difference?
Any Christian is the Church in England. The institution of the priests and the bishops of the Church of England are the Church of England. The Church of England is not an institution that I value. I'm happy to see it de-established. I'm happy to see it dissolved. I'm happy to see it replaced by the Anglican Mission in England, or by the Free Church of England, or by GAFCON, or by any other faithful church. But the Church in England has been here before the Church of England and will still be here after the Church of England has died. Any other questions?
Why is Christianity diminishing in England?
Right.
Yeah, so when is this? When is this going to be?
Because people are frightened to leave the Muslim.
Brother, do you want to hear me answer the question or him?
What's the question, Boxila?
So the question is, the brother asked, why is Christianity diminishing in England? I'll tell you why, brothers and sisters.
Why?
Because of us. It's no one else's fault. It's not the fault of the Muslims. It's not the fault of the liberals. It's the fault of the Christians. But let me be clear about why. To answer your question specifically.
Why?
It's because we treasure in our hearts our division. We think it's more important to be divided than be united. That's one reason. I'm going to give you a bunch, but there's going to be more that I could say. I'll stop at 5 if I get to 5. Number 2, it is in our structures. The fact that all of our fellowships act like independent autonomous agents rather than uniting with all the other Christians in a square mile. And for that reason, our energies, our time and our resources are limited. And our networks mean that good ideas and good practices are not shared amongst Christians as a whole. The answer to that, brother, is what's called the Benedict option. Go and look it up. The third reason is because Christians practice idolatry. The idolatry of liberalism, the idolatry of nationalism, the idolatry of denominationalism. These idols mean that we share our Christian identity with another identity that is not Christian. If you interrupt again, no, you can't. I'm answering his question. And because we're sharing our identity with non-Christian identities, we're sharing our energies and resources with agendas that are not Christian. The solution to that is to double down on our Christianity so that everything that we do is for the cause of the kingdom and the church. The fourth reason that we Christians are failing is because we don't have a political ideology. Ladies and gentlemen, Christians up until the 1700s had a political ideology. For the last 300 years, we have been taught a lie that Christianity doesn't have a political ideology. And it wasn't until the 1990s that the question that our faith should influence our politics became a settled question in the church. Everyone now accepts amongst Christians that our faith should affect our politics, but we haven't come to an understanding of what that means politically. So I'm going to tell you in a single sentence what it means. The establishment of a new Christendom is what we should be moving for. The fifth and final reason, ladies and gentlemen, the fifth and final reason, before I take another question from someone other than him, because he's been interrupting the whole time, is that Christians need to practice solidarity amongst Christians. Your allegiance to Nigerian Christians is more important than your allegiance to the United Kingdom. Your allegiance to the Christians in Pakistan is more important than your allegiance to the European Union. Your allegiance to the Christians in Iraq or the Philippines or the Sudan or North America or in Sweden is more important than your allegiance to the United Nations, NATO, or any other institution that you could think of. That's the reason, that's the solution. Any other questions? You can stop interrupting.
Yeah, sorry, question. So when are you going to get all this right? When are you going to get together? When's the union going to start?
The brother asks a fair question. When is the union going to start? It's a great question. I'm happy to answer the question. It'll start when Christians repent of the 5 things that I've just talked about and change their hearts and minds on the 5 things that I've just talked about.